Hi, Jay. Welcome to Off the Grid. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. And I gotta say, people listening may not realize this, but they need to. You had one of the most enjoyable, professional, and unique pre recording interactions with a guest. I've hosted podcasts since 2015. I've done like an inordinate amount of episodes myself as a host. And I've also
hmm
been on, I don't know, 2 to 3 a month for a long, long time. And there's nothing like what I just experienced in a very great way. People just need to know that about you.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Sure.
As a podcaster, I'm all about connecting and with each other and with our bodies. And I just had a guest on the show, Samara Bay, who actually led us in our own vocal connection practice. And I really just learned that if you breathe better, you speak better. And it's like so great.
Totally. Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I talk to people in my client interactions all the time about their shows because it's a piece of where we're
hmm
testing our ideas when we develop them together. And a lot of times it's about like, can you speak through the chest because you're tight, or
hmm
you're sitting hunched, or you're not natural. Like, can you drop the shoulders? I even had producers that I've been friends with or collaborators with for a long time talk to me, whether it's like on camera or it's a podcast only, about like finding these comfort words, like making a joke with a friend and then you say some silly phrase and the producer goes, oh, that's the word. Like, Jay, remember that phrase you said, which is like, you're like a ninja, right? Like, that sounded like you, Jay. Say that in your recordings to reset you and sound like you when you're feeling a little bit too nasally or too tight or something like that. So I feel very relaxed. I feel like I'm speaking through the chest, and now I can hopefully deliver for you and your audience.
Yeah, well, I'm grateful and honored. And I know we could nerd out about podcasting things all day, but we're actually here to talk about something else entirely related, but different.
Sure.
So I wanted to invite you on the show to talk about resonance over reach, which for me has become kind of a key area of focus in your work, one of your sort of signature concepts, talks, whatever it may be, however you're evolving it. And so I thought I'd take us in there. I'm going to quote you to you, one of my favorite podcaster things to do. And so, on one of the episodes of your podcast where you're talking about speakeasy business, here's something you say that like really pulled me in. And I want to have you expand on it a little bit for our listeners. So, there you say, one of the most accepted norms among modern creators and companies seems to be that marketing is about reach. It's about getting in front of the most possible people. But I disagree. Marketing is not about getting in front of people, it's about ensuring they care. And you go on to talk about how ensuring they care is about knowing, liking, and trusting us. And to do that, we have to develop resonance. So, could you take a few minutes to explain to our listeners here at Off the Grid this distinction between resonance and reach and why you think
Sure.
focusing on reach may be a mistake?
It's kind of like if you obsess over how to shake hands or how many hands you've been shaking when your goal is to get married. Like, is reach a part of the process? Is the handshake a part of it? Yeah, of course. To the degree that we obsess over it and spend time, energy, money, and effort no, not at all. Right? Like, if reach is how many see it and resonance is how much they care, then no amount of reach is going to guarantee that they care. So it's a little bizarre to me as a storyteller, as a consultant, a coach, an author, a speaker, sort of like everywhere I'm showing up, I'm finding hopefully smart, strategic, and memorable ways of saying to people like, hey, you know that thing you're saying to the world, it has to matter to other people. But I do think a beautiful thing happens if you can create work that matters more, which is my entire mission for people. You can hustle for attention less.
Hmm.
And, so the whole idea of resonance is like, that's where actions come from. If you care, you might act. And if you don't trigger an action in whoever you're speaking to, then whatever you're after doesn't happen. Right. So you could be
Hmm.
and I know this is not your audience, but you could be a cold, hard, calculating capitalist only, and you should care about resonance because that's where results come from. Or you can be someone who's building a heart-based business who, like me, maybe cares deeply about the emotional side of the work, how much meaning is bottled up in our work, how the others receiving your work are experiencing it, and hopefully taking it with
hmm
them and using it to their advantage. And then, of course, coming back around to help you and your business too. You could be that type of person. And of course, you should care about resonance. So waltzing around the business world as I have for many years, first at big corporations, then startups, then as an independent for many years, I just see a lot of people missing the point, like forgetting that it's not about like 10xing your content and like churning out more stuff. You're just like trapped on a hamster wheel going nowhere. How do you get off that hamster wheel and start to compete more on the impact of your ideas and not the volume of your content? Well, you have to start by saying something that matters, right? And then we can talk about all the other techniques and tactics that follow. So to me, that is probably the highest order idea from which all of the rest of my work flows, which is how do I help people make things that matter? In other words, make things that resonate with others, so that people like us can do more meaningful work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this idea that like the purpose of resonance, the reason we need to focus on it is actually to get the impact that we're hoping for our work, to find these results. And I think this is something interesting for a lot of off the grid listeners because there are a lot of artists in our listener base and they're very accustomed to focusing on the work
Right.
and to being deep in process with it. And I think, what would you say to people like that who are saying, I'm really making work that matters, but it's not reaching anybody? That's why I'm
Yeah.
focusing on reach. What do we do
Yeah.
then?
I like to say that I'm trying to equip people with substance to compete in a world that's tipping too far into the hype, right? Like there's a
Mm,
lot of hollow gimmicks and stunts and things like that I know many people listening are thinking like, yeah, I hate that stuff, but it's what works, or in whether they
hmm.
do it or not, right? And I just so fundamentally disagree.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're trying to have a certain type of business with a certain type of vibe for a certain type of person, maybe I'll give you like a percent correct, maybe. Um, what if you're an artist, if you're an expert, if you're a substantive teacher of anything, what matters. And that's what you're saying is like, Amelia, you're
Hmm.
like, people come to me, they're like, yeah, listen, this is meaningful to me and it should be meaningful to other people. So what matters, but what you say has to make that clear.
Hmm.
And that's typically where it breaks down. I spent 3 years as basically a road keynote speaker. You have road comics. I was a road speaker, not famous, but earning a healthy living being on the road as a paid public speaker. And one of the very many things I've been taught as a speaker, or that I learned, is that you're in the how to think business. There's some how
Hmm.
tos wrapped up in it, but a keynote to the whole audience is the how to think speech. And to shift someone's perspective and to deliver something overly memorable like that, deeply resonant like that, you have to go out and meet people where they're at. And I don't
Hmm.
see people mastering that ability. Like, when you are a writer or an author, as I am, and you think about an idea like resonance, you do weird stuff. Like, I looked at the science of resonance. What does this mean? We keep saying
Hmm.
this word resonate. Everyone's hopefully nodding, like, yeah, I want my work to resonate. What do we mean when we say resonance? Well, if you look at the sciences, just suspend our work for a moment, go down this weird rabbit hole with me for a bit. In the sciences, it's about frequencies, right? Like think about
Hmm.
wave like sound or energy. Even pushing my daughter on a swing, for example. If I can match her frequency with my own, I amplify her. I'm literally imparting an energy by matching that swing. So when one frequency matches another, they're called resonant, right? It
Hmm.
begins with alignment. Is can you go out to understand people with a sense of empathy for them and actually meet them where they're at? So like in a keynote, I'm not going, hey, stop doing this, start doing that. That's not the first thing out of my mouth. The first thing I have to do is say, hey, you know that goal you want? And people go, oh, thankfully this person's here to serve me. Yes, I have that goal. Okay, well, and you're coming at it this way? You're doing this is the status quo? And people go, oh, yeah, okay, you clearly understand me too. You want what I want, and you understand what I'm going through. Yep. Okay, here's some problems with that now. People go, oh, no. What do I do instead? Well, here's this change, and here's the story to illustrate it, and here's the methodology to execute it. There's this wonderful craft to conveying your ideas from a stage or in any place you show up. But if you want to resonate, it really begins with this place of alignment, which then leads to them feeling amplified. Like we've all experienced that. You kind of go, yes, this, like, or I feel seen, or oh my gosh, this is so for me. So I define resonance as the urge to act that people feel when our message or a moment with us aligns so closely with them that they feel amplified, right? Their thoughts, their emotions, even their abilities feel amplified. So you can't control whether or not they act, but you
Hmm.
can control that like energy being imparted with the way you're showing up. In other words, what you're saying to convey what you know. can instill that energy in people so they take an action. And again, it's not this like woo-woo thing. I'm happy to wax eloquent about the philosophy of creativity all the live long day, but I'm also a realist in the business world, being a translator to some people that don't think like that or think like me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so if you want people to act, they first have to feel moved to act, right? That's why I love storytelling. That's why I love podcasts. That's why I love all these things that feel like my home in creativity. It's because those are the vehicles to impart this energy. So yes, it's great that you, an artist or you, an entrepreneur, are doing something that you feel is very substantive and should matter. You have to use the language at your disposal to make that clear to others. You have to start by aligning with them.
Yeah, I love this emphasis on beginning with alignment. And I think that's something I see a lot in these sorts of intuitive small business spaces that I occupy is a focus on alignment within ourselves in order to start and run our businesses. And I think that that's important, but
Mm-hmm.
it can get us a little caught in our what I guess I want to say, like a little high on our own supply. And we
Yeah.
forget that piece of like, I'm not doing all of this simply for myself. If I want to make money in a business, I need to be out there aligning with others and providing for and serving other people
Right.
and creating that like amplification. And that's what allows the message to spread, the wisdom to grow, and like we get moving together. I keep thinking about that metaphor you use of like, or not literally, not a metaphor, a literal example of resonance of pushing your daughter on a swing. Like we have to do the push. We can't just both walk up to the swing and like be there.
Right.
Nothing will
And
happen.
you can't do it your way either. Like this is about eating some humble pie here, where
Mm,
I know as a communicator, wherever I show up, be it a podcast, a newsletter, a speech, anywhere, this type of experience, I want to get people somewhere, but I
mm-hmm,
can't just leap there. And it's really tempting when we are high on our own supply, as you said, when we know where we want others to go, we want them to see it that way. We want them to understand our solution or our art or our offer. It's really tempting to say, okay, well, they need to hit every alphabet letter along the way, A through Z. But the way we communicate is like A, B, LMNOP, XYZ, because we're so eager or we're so well versed in it, right? It's
mm-hmm,
really difficult. It's kind of excruciating actually to know how far out we have to move from what we already understand to align with other people. I'll give you a quick example. I was working with this woman and she had been in business for years and years. She'd been an entrepreneur for a couple of decades and even had some clients that work with her. She's basically a business coach focused on wealth and money. But she's also like a colorist and loves fashion and all these other things. And she's a certified, I think she called it a sound healer. There's all these things that like, it's not for me, frankly, right? It's like I
mm-hmm,
hear this language and I'm like, okay, that's great for some people who like it. It's just a little woo woo for me. No worries. Like that, I won't ever understand that part of your business, but you're explaining to me very excitedly why it matters when you coach somebody and help them with their, their limiting beliefs and you're trying to get rid of them around money. Great.
mm-hmm,
But she was a little bit high on her own supply and she's a little bit too far into that domain. And I said to her, well, what you're explaining to me is that all of these things are about a human's growth. Like she even said, my clients who stuck with me, I asked them why. I'm trying to learn and get better at positioning myself publicly to stand out. And she said the commonality was, and this is like part of our work together, is like go ask your ideal
mm-hmm,
buyer what they're doing, why they care, because you're trying to replicate the ideal scenario. All of her ideal clients said, I'm still with you because you grow and evolve, which helps me grow
mm,
and evolve, which helps kind of pace. I am not this robot, I am a human being. And then we're talking about numbers and dollar signs here. And so often, all these other self professed experts or even well meaning coaches have some kind of fixed philosophy or system around handling your finances and growing your wealth. And this woman, this client of mine, does not. And I said, that's fantastic. So allow me to go out to the audience on your behalf and let's pitch this. I said, forget some of the stuff that I said was woo woo or that you really love. Forget some of the strategic explanations that you understand about your business. And maybe what you're saying to the world is, well, to better understand and maximize your wealth, to have a peaceful relationship with money in your world, what you have to say is, you are going to grow and evolve. And so your approach to money needs to grow and evolve.
mm,
And that's why I focus so much on these internal emotional things with my clients, not just the spreadsheets, not just the technology, not just the bits and the bots and the dollar signs, right? And it was like I saw a veil like lifted in front of her eye, because she had never considered that, like, that's the window into her worldview that she had to start with. So people would press themselves up against the glass and go, I got to get in. This is amazing. Right. So we're so eager to share everything about our world that we leap too far ahead, and we have to go back to where they're at and hit every beat along the way to get them to where we want them to go. It's hard. It's very hard is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think that what I'm hearing and what you're saying too is so many of us are taught that we need to sell the transformation that we're going to offer to our clients, which I think is true, but we lose the journey along the way. Like we
Yeah.
forget that we just want to be like, you're here and I'll get you there. And either we like pepper in all of these like random steps that will get them there without actually taking them step by step, or we just skip it all together and we're just selling the transformation. And that doesn't work
Yeah.
either.
And it works a little bit better, I think, if you're starting with someone who's novice and new and maybe naive, where like your content might look like tips and tricks are us, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
basic how-tos and 101 level advice, maybe even sensationalized hacks and cheats, because you're like, you want this giant transformation, but you haven't started yet. Once somebody starts, they kind of realize, oh, I need something a little nuanced here, or maybe very nuanced here. I need something much more
Yeah.
personalized. I'm not buying into all the hacks and cheats and stuff we see on social media. The thing
Mm-hmm.
we're here to talk about, leaving behind a little bit more, right? Like, I'm a little bit more savvy, even if I just started but have some experience. All of these gurus and the hype around social starts to fall away, because you're like, oh, that's not actually it. Like, they keep promising me I can earn six figures in the first year. I had someone DM me. These are like digital gnats. I like swat them away. They're like, it was a consultant who promised, he said, I can help grow your newsletter from 0 to 100K subscribers in 6 months. And I look under the hood, because I do the hard work so you don't have to. And I look under the hood at this individual and I'm like, what is this person really doing here? Like, in their social feed, they just quoted like all the big name bro-y entrepreneurs you'd expect as like quotes about success. On their website, they had like no experience to speak of. On their LinkedIn, it was clear like this person graduated last year with a finance major and is now doing this weird consulting thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
their clients that they listed had no discernible public presence. So maybe they only had 100K subscribers on an email list and never showed up anywhere else. Like, they failed. This person failed the sniff test for me. But here's the thing, like, that person could very well serve with substance their clientele. I'm judging harshly based on the cover of the book here, but the cover was really icky and really
Mm-hmm.
stereotypical. And honestly, as annoying and icky as it was, pretty generic, like pretty common in certain
Mm-hmm.
circles of the business world. So this person was trying so hard to stand out that they actually ended up blending in. And the phrase that I landed on in my head and I wrote about the other day, I was like, oh, that's what this person's doing. And that's what we do on social too much, is we're cosplaying success, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to wrap ourselves in everything. It looks like you're successful, but is that leading to revenue? Is it leading to clients? Is it leading to fulfillment? You know, it's like the basketball player that I always encounter at my local outdoor court when I shoot around. He walks up whenever we play a pickup game in like all this exceptional looking new gear, right? New shoes, a headband, an arm sleeve, an awesome bag, like whatever fancy sports drink is on the market right now. But that he looks the part of an exceptional basketball player. But then a funny thing happens when the ball goes up and we start to play. He can't play the game. But like, playing basketball is what basketball is, right? So, I mean, I'm going on my soapbox here too long, but like, that individual is representative of a whole vibe right now that we're dealing with in business,
Yes.
because we're forgetting it's not about reach, it's about resonance.
Yeah. I definitely would agree that social media has made the performance of the thing more popular than doing the thing itself. That's
Oh,
why we see it's like the pure commodification of every skill
yes,
on these platforms.
right.
And what I also think is interesting in some ways is I'm just thinking now about the concept of resonance. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, a lot of people are on that vibe. They're like resonating with that frequency of the like tips, tricks, hacks. That's all I want. But I think what we don't get there, like that frequency has a very like low amplification. We're not getting those like real journeys that we're taking with people. We're not getting those like real identification. And it's really easy to then just like peace out and be like, great, I got your 10 tricks and I'm out of here. I'm not following you. I'm not
Yeah.
building this sort of deeper relationship. And I think for
Right.
me, and this is in your work as well, resonance is intended to cultivate a relationship and to then like create that trust
Yep.
that leads them to take the action. Because you said we can't control the action. We can only control if they are resonate, only control that moment of the resonance. But
Right.
if we build the trust, we're more likely to evoke
Yep.
the action.
Yeah. Great marketing is not about who arrives. It's about who stays. Trust and love and affinity are earned, meaning they're earned over time. And we're really obsessed, back to the handshake thing, back to the reach thing. We're really obsessed about leaping out and getting in front of people. And that's a craft in and of itself. I can't lie. But it's also a craft, and I think a more important one and a more powerful one for us to understand and master, to ensure that people care about what we have to say and what we have to offer. And we're just losing the script. We're not really thinking about that. I think about one of the things I'm, as an idealist and a storyteller, and my favorite sitcom ever was Scrubs, and the main character JD, Zach Braff's character, used to say, "I'm a sensei," right? Like that's who I am. I'm a sensei. It helps me creatively, very much so. As that person, I'm also trying to, for my clients, trade in reality. And I think a lot of us are sold something that is not reality. We're told grow an audience. We're told become an influencer, become a creator, become a thought leader. And either the people saying that don't share how, or the how that they share feels hackish, feels short-sighted, feels gimmicky. And so we see through that as unsophisticated, as not strategic. Maybe even we see those individuals more like charlatans offering magic solutions than we see them as strategic business voices. So like in my estimation, it's because they're not selling you reality. They're selling you something you can't really control, which is the trappings of success, or maybe even fame, even just fame in your space. Can't control that. Here's what you can control. The first, can you develop a premise? What is the big idea driving a project or your overall brand? It's like your positioning becomes your perspective. Like you take your perspective, you figure out what it is, you figure out how to articulate it through conversations and content. You turn the perspective into positioning. That's a premise. Podcasts, great podcasts, have premises. This podcast has an exceptional premise, right? Because it's an assertion you're making. Just like when you set up a joke, jokes have premises. You ever notice how toddlers interrupt us every time we're talking to our partner about something serious? That's not a joke. There's no punchline yet. It's an assertion I'm making. This happens. Or what your assertion is, this should happen. We should go off the grid a little bit more. We should be able to build our businesses in these ways to thrive without relying on these things that are not values aligned to us. My podcast, Unthinkable. You should trust your intuition and your created craft more than best practices and blueprints. Unthinkable. From the outside looking in, to break from a best practice, unthinkable. Well, let me tell you stories about why it's not, right? A premise is you making an assertion, but using the language needed for others to understand it, right? Not in your personal jargon, but in a way they can access. That's a premise. It's that defensible purpose from your perspective for your audience. And that could be on one project, it could be over your whole platform. You can control that. You can develop that actively. You can control the skill set that you build to take that premise to market, storytelling. You can control the types of content you select and matching that content to who you are and what you like and what the premise is even. I do a lot of weird things in my podcast, not to rebel against the standard episode format, but because every episode is like an argument for my premise. So I'm using the premise to inform things like the episode structuring and editing, and even the idea generation and the guests I select and the questions I ask. Those are the things we control. The output. So you get premise, storytelling, and content. The output of those three things is you resonate. The output of those three things is you might have influence in the right domain or the right area among the right people. Those are the things that everyone is selling you. Like, I can guarantee it. No, you can't. So again, I'm an idealist, but I'm also trying to trade in reality on behalf of my clients.
Yeah. I think another concept from your work that really was impactful for me, that resonated so much, was your sort of description of the commodity cage and the field of favorites. Because I think for listeners here, they've probably identified many of these sorts of charlatans that we know. And it's not that they're not out there saying like, I can 10x this, I can do that. But what I see a lot of off the grid listeners do is be generally informational, which is kind of one of the like ultimate sin is a little strong for language, but does feel like one of the things that you're really trying to get people to stop doing by cultivating a premise, by moving beyond these sorts of, in my opinion, just like basic SEO seeking content in order
Yeah,
to develop something more personal and insightful. Could you speak
right.
a little bit to that slogan you have? Don't be the best, be their favorite, or don't be forgettable, be their favorite.
Yeah, yeah. I love to say that to people. Don't be the best, be their favorite. So, let's play a little thought exercise here. What would you say is the best Disney film of all time? And if you're listening, answer in your head. But for you, Amelia, what's the best Disney film of all time?
Okay, I'm gonna say Mulan.
Okay, so you thank you for the participation, but you are wrong. Um, there is actually one objectively correct answer, and I'm going to share it with you now. It's a Goofy movie. And that's because if you know, you know, it's Powerline, the pop star in the film, who's like legitimately amazing, and I still want the album. Please, Disney, listen. Everyone at Disney listens to this, right? Like, please,
Of
please give me the
course.
Powerline album from a Goofy movie. All right, so this is a ridiculous thing to ask anybody. Like, what's the best Disney film of all time? Because we actually can't say, right? That's an objective way of seeing the world. I'm saying the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're saying one movie, your listeners are saying several different movies. I'm saying no, you're all wrong. It's this one. It's fun, but it's silly, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing that's revealing with that question and why I love asking it everywhere I go with people is something very telling about our work happens when I ask people that. What's the
Mm-hmm.
best? They don't answer it. I asked you what's the best. You didn't answer that. You answered, well, this is my favorite. Right? Favorite doesn't mean anything objective or academic. We spend a lot of time in our work trying to project I'm the best, I have the most followers, I'm the number one ranked. You know, I came out of software companies who are obsessed with like analyst rankings and like we're the number one most reviewed. By the way, gameable, buy pay to play systems, like we do such weird things trying to tell others I'm the best. That's not how we make decisions. Like we're not objective, we're subjective creatures. We're emotional. And then we rationalize why we made a choice later. So just as a thought exercise, think of your favorite things. If you're listening on a walk or in your home or in the car, think of your favorite things right around here, right around you now, or that you experience throughout the day. Maybe you're wearing a shirt that's your favorite. Like my favorite shirt is not objectively the best shirt that exists or even that I own, right? But it feels irreplaceable to me.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite sports team is the New York Knicks. And if you know anything about sports, you know that for literal decades, they were among the objective worst franchises, not even in the sport, in all of sports, but like still my favorite. So the punchline to this doesn't sound like rational thinking, does it? No, but it sounds like human thinking, which is good news for us because that's what our audience is made up of. And so
Mm-hmm.
we shouldn't try to be the best. We should try to be their favorite. And I'm happy to get into what you hinted at, which is the commodity cage being the issue. I'm happy to get into that, but I just want to stop there because I think this is one of the biggest realizations we can have as experts, as entrepreneurs, as marketers, as people trying to lead a community is what we are in the business of doing fundamentally is not projecting anything objective or academic to other people. So they pick us and stick with us. No, we want to be the object of this emotional, almost irrational bias in our favor against the odds so that the biggest comes along or the most famous comes along. And you don't worry about that because you're like, well, I don't have to be the biggest or the best to compete. I have to be their favorite, their personal or preferred pick for a specific purpose.
Yeah. And to me, that's so much about relationships again. It's like
Yeah.
especially within the realm of podcasting, it's like what I'm cultivating there is this sense of I want my listeners to feel close to me. To, I want the episodes to be unmissable. I want this to be their favorite show. There
Right.
are certainly people with more marketing experience than me making podcasts like this, who've worked for longer, who are quote unquote better at every stage of the journey. But it doesn't matter because off the grid listeners don't want to go listen to them. They've listened to those shows,
Yeah.
but they're here because it's their favorite. Thanks, listeners. I'm
Right.
grateful.
Yeah. Yeah. And in other words, what you're able to do in a great way is compete on the impact of your ideas, not the volume of your content, not the posturing, the size of who your business professes to be or who you profess to be or all these things. You said something interesting a little while ago, which is like there are some people out there who seem to be resonating using all these tactics that many of us dislike. I'm not here to convince them otherwise. I'm here to show people that there is a different way. Because what you're seeing is all that junk that we really actively dislike or abhor And you're like, but it's what works. But what else is there? But like, and that my job is to help people see a different path and then walk it. And do it in their own way, not be like, here's my simple system for this, right? Like that's why I coach and consult and give speeches and all these things that feel like high ticket services, not a simple course that like has 7 prompts and 7 videos and you're allegedly fixed, right? I don't believe in that. So it's a long way of saying like, yeah, sure, some people are resonating with tactics we don't like, but there is a different way. But it's going to cause us to have to rethink some things. Like, where does the power of your idea come from, right? Like, how you want to have an impact. What makes something high impact? I think there's only 2 things. So picture like a 2x2 matrix, right? There's 2 dimensions to this. The value of your ideas to other people and the originality of your ideas to you. That's what causes something to have an impact. And I think it's directly proportional. So just taking value really quickly, a lot of us are stuck doing low value things that feel like we're sharing informational content. Like, what is AI? The backstory of Anthony Bourdain. I even saw somebody today say, just go curate a bunch of ideas from other experts and don't even add your own take. Just make that a blog post, right? Low value stuff. Higher value than informational content is instructional, right? How-tos, that kind of stuff. Still not as valuable as you could be because you ultimately handed somebody a map, right? Information is like, here's the map, it's of North America. Informational, low value. There's some value, but you're beyond it pretty quickly. The instructional stuff, which is kind of where we get stuck, especially if we're like an expert-based business or thinker, that's the stuff that looks like drawing a red line to an X on the map. So useful, but you really haven't equipped your audience to navigate any obstacles, right? You haven't really truly empowered them because a tree is going to fall on that path that you didn't anticipate, or you didn't know that, they walk with a limp or something like that. There's stuff about their situation you cannot anticipate. So you gave them generalized advice and they won't know what to do because you've basically turned them into a direction follower. But much more valuable to them than following directions is knowing how to navigate, right? Being a navigator, like knowing how to use a compass is much more useful and valuable than knowing how to follow directions on a map. That's what an insight does. So you move from informational to instructional to insightful. That is the most valuable content. And that's not the backstory of Anthony Bourdain. That's like what made Bourdain an exceptional storyteller and what we can borrow from that. Or not the 6 fastest growing brands in this space today. It's why are they growing so fast? That's way, way more valuable to have the insight. Knowing why something works is more useful and valuable than knowing what works. So that's one dimension. And then the other is much simpler to understand, maybe harder to execute, which is your originality. Are you general on one side? Anybody could have said it. I can get it from anyone, and I guess you're anyone. Or personal. In other words, it's from your personal perspective. It's from your life. And the way I like to think about that, given the moment we're living in, is that people and humans both run on LLMs, or excuse me, AI and humans both run on LLMs. You're not going to see me lauding the prompts that people are sharing about how to generate content more quickly through AI. I'm not that guy. But I can appreciate, okay, there's this underpinning technology. It's worth understanding. It's an LLM. It's a large language model. That's the tech. But people have little life moments, and we run on those things. And I think the differentiator between being more original and being general, being a commodity, is, are you willing to pull from those? Are you willing to use little moments in your day, observations you made, memories, people you encounter, conversations you have as fodder for stories, for metaphors, for new insights that you extract? Because that's the stuff no one else can access. So if you combine these 2 sort of spectra, which is the plural of spectrum, which I love, sounds like a superhero, but the first spectrum being value and the second being originality, if you want something to be more valuable that you share, focus on the insight, make it more insightful. And then if you want something to be more original, focus on your perspective. Is that coming through? And the combination of the 2 means you're going to have a greater impact.
Yeah. And I think this is kind of my last thought or question I wanted to end us on is, what that does is it breaks you out of the commodity cage, to use your phrase. And for me, what actually is so liberating about that is once I'm out of the commodity cage, it feels like I've kind of escaped the attention economy in its own terms. So even a little bit where you started was like, we have to compete against the hype. We treat
Yeah.
attention like it's a scarce commodity. That's what the attention economy means. It's like envisioning the world where we have limited attention and so many
Sure.
things competing for it.
Right.
And so as creators, our content needs to compete. But what I've found is when we actually care about things, like when we really love them, we kind of have a boundless energy for them. Certainly, we have limitations on you have kids, you have a job, it's not that you have unlimited hours, but
Right.
like the things I love, I can always find like a little bit, like a moment, 30 seconds to listen to the podcast. I can find 3 minutes to put the song on. I like
Sure.
stay up late to watch the next episode of the show I really want. And
Yeah.
I think that that is really like, I see so much hype and fear around the attention economy destroying
Yeah.
creators.
Yeah.
But if we're really in it, I'm not so sure that's true. And so I wanted to wrap by kind of asking your
Huh.
perspective on the attention economy, if you think this.
Yeah. It's a really great question. I mean, I came out of marketing organizations at software companies mostly. And there's a phrase that a lot of my peers in my old stomping grounds love to cling to, which is that people have shorter and shorter attention spans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all due respect to the people doing the hard work of trying to market an organization. No, we do not. We don't have shorter attention spans. We have a lower tolerance for mediocrity. And what's
Mm-hmm.
happening here is a lot of the advice and a lot of the technology coming onto the market is making it really easy to be mediocre at scale. And the opposite of that is not to do something stunt like, is not to press harder on the mediocrity or be more clever or any of these stuff. The opposite of that is to have an idea that you have developed that at once is more insightful and more personal. In other words, it makes it more valuable and more original to you. So you can escape this commodity cage where we're all on the hamster wheel and we're packed in tight and you start running free like I'm the only game in town for this, right? We make time for the things that resonate with us emotionally. So it's this weird, you know, apologies to Alanis Morissette, like a black fly in my Chardonnay, not actually ironic. Ray Yane on my wedding day, not actually ironic. Here's something that is ironic. Most of the people who are aimlessly trying to be known do things that make them harder to know. They come off
Mm-hmm.
as generic. They come off as forgettable because they're trying to be visible instead of memorable. But that's the job. The job for us is not to get in front of people, it's to ensure they care, to do something memorable, right? So we who don't want to be on that hamster wheel are far more empowered today than ever before to actually do things that stand out easier and resonate deeper because it's way, way, way more useful to our cause to stand up in front of an entire waterfall of gray, which is what everyone else is producing, and shine bright in our own colors because we want to and know how, than if we just had a trickle of gray behind us, right? So thank you to the AI. Thank you to the generic hucksters, even the well-meaning experts who are just stuck in that commodity. Thank you to the people willing to or just unknowingly creating mediocrity at scale. Because for those of us who don't want to and know how to stand out a little bit more, we stand out a lot more because of what they are producing in the world.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that perspective. And I will just add for off the grid listeners that a great way to stand out is to make an unconventional choice and share insights from that. And that's the whole premise of this podcast. What brought this podcast into being is that I made the unconventional choice to leave social media
Yeah.
and then I'm here sharing about it and having a
Every
clear
episode.
perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
You are an explorer. You have expertise, but you're showing up as an explorer, not an expert. And what you're exploring is not a list of generic topics. It's a premise, right? There's this
Mm-hmm.
real power in a premise. It's you're making an assertion. I see the world a certain way. The status quo is broken. I want to get to the mountain peak over there. If you agree with my vision for what should be, come with me. I'm hacking through the jungle every episode, right? You have this amazing ability to take a perspective that you have but turn it into language that then becomes your positioning. So you make something readily apparent when before it was only discovered after spending lots of time with you. And that's really the job of a premise, is to take what would have been discovered with time with you anyway and make it apparent so people encounter it and it immediately resonates, right? It's not just the urge to act, it's this instant urge to act that people feel when they come up against your premise. So thank you for doing the work that you do. And also know that I'm going to be citing this podcast everywhere I go to teach the power of a premise because this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jay, for all of your work, which has led me to so many light bulb moments, insights. I mean, just how you've shared today. I feel like you are so clear on the premise of your work and the light bulb concepts and reframes that take us deeper and deeper into it. And so Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else you would like to tell off the grid listeners about or kind of invite them into your ecosystem?
The most important thing to do is immediately, like, if you want to follow me, follow me. Fantastic. I'm on the internet. You probably have heard of it. It's easy to find. Um, don't go hiding in my work, right? Go and make something that truly matters to you. It's a paradox. If you want to connect deeper externally, you have to start going deeper internally, right? If it doesn't matter to you, if the emotional stakes of it weren't clear in the story you're telling, then others don't have anything to really connect with. So that's the call to action, if there is one, is go make something that feels like you're being more honest with yourself, because chances are you're going to have a lot more likelihood of resonating deeper with others.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Jay, for your time and for being here. Thanks, listeners, for tuning in. And we will see you all off the grid. Bye for now.